Hello, everyone, and happy Friday, and welcome to another author interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia. Many of you know me as the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill. And joining us today is an author making their official debut here on the show. Now, my guest today's journey began with a foundation in business administration and a 30-year career in retail management. However, the real magic unfolded later in her life. After returning to school, she was reintroduced to Dungeons and Dragons through a college project and quickly became hooked. Since then, she has been both a player and a DM. That's Dungeon Master for anyone who doesn't know the terminology of the lore. And she has been channeling that passion into creating compelling characters and expansive worlds. And this creative spark inspired her to pursue her love for human stories, leading to a BA in Biological Anthropology from UCSD. Her diverse academic background, along with decades of real world experiences, informed her debut novel, Catching Chat. I'm probably butchered that, I apologize. A captivating fantasy that explores themes of connection and identity. Today, she serves her community as a library branch manager, while on her off hours, she continues to play D&D, constantly fueling her imagination for new tales. So, without further ado, let's give a huge round of applause to a very good friend of mine and fellow author, Kim KT Pike. Kim, welcome to the show.
Hi, welcome. Thank you. It's good to be here. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too, Kim. Good to see you. And I have to say, I love the name of your book, and my apologies for butchering it in the beginning, but I'm really intrigued by it. And I was wondering, as a little icebreaker question, Kim, are there any well, I don't want to say spoilers, but are there any things to look forward into the release of your book?
It's already been released. It was released on October 28th.
All right.
And spoilers and looking forward to it. It's kind of okay, yes. Very first one, chapter 1 is an assassination.
Ooh.
And a lot of people are like, oh no, I wasn't really here for that kind of story. But it doesn't stay that way. It's not, grim. It's not dark. It's not death all the way through. There are going to be some battles. There are going to be some, angsty parts, but it really is a book about connection and finding, your niche, finding your true family. And there's a lot of heart in it. So if you're not into assassinations, if you're not really into that thing, it's okay. Skip down a little bit further on chapter 1 to the section break, and it'll go right towards getting paid.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So, before we dive further into the creation of your novel, Kim, let's step back a little bit and talk a little bit more about you as the author. So, from your bio, as it states that you had a background in business administration as well as retail management. And then later in your life, you got a BA in biological anthropology and combine that with your passion from D&D, from a good friend of yours. How did all of that collectively lead to the creation of your debut novel?
So initially I played D&D way back when I first started going to college. I had about a year and a half or so of playing. My character was Cassandra. She was a dwarf. She was amazing. And then I left the gaming world. I joined retail. Retail gave me a lot of information about how teams work, how to motivate people, how diverse groups work, and that type of thing. And then I got a little, I don't know, bored with retail. It was a little difficult because I was a retail manager. So, it was a lot of I want to return this. This is
Mm.
broken. The installer screwed up here. And it was just a lot of,
Right.
fixing things. And I didn't feel like I was getting out of retail what I really wanted to. So I decided to go back to college, and went into an archaeology degree, and that changed to biological anthropology because I fell in love with bones, ancient hominins, etc. And so then one of my professors uh, had a religion class. It was basically an anthropology of religion, and it
Mm.
was called something quite better, magic with or witchcraft, magic and religion, something like that. Anyway, it was amazing. We had to create our own religion, and I was like, you know what? I want to use D&D as the basis for my religion. So I got out all of my books. Actually, I had to trade them in for Dungeons and Dragons version 5e, and I pulled out Cassandra and I reimagined her in this new edition. And then I was like, you know what? I need some more characters. I don't feel like I really understand this yet. I want to play, kind of a mini campaign.
Mm.
So I pulled all of these characters from my online gaming and just started creating all of these characters and then their backstories. And then they started meeting each other. And I knew that Cassandra was not going to like Lonnie. Like, I just knew it,
Mm.
um, because of their backgrounds. Cassandra is from a culture where you're always working, you're contributing. Lonnie is from a culture where education is highly desired. So those two didn't quite mesh.
Mm.
Um, and I knew they wouldn't. And so my brain just kept wondering, like, well, how did they meet? What other characters are there? I knew Belle would absolutely adore Lonnie, and I knew everybody would adore Belle. So these stories just started going on in my head, and I had to start writing them down. And that's really where it began. My As far as how the biological anthropology fit in, it's really the introduction of cultures, the study of different cultures, and I think we'll get into that a little bit later with some of the questions. But a love of different cultural backgrounds. Um, and of course, I'm a hobby genealogist, so I had to put a whole lot of family tree stuff in there. Anyway, lots of fun.
Nice. All right, Kim. All right. So let's go even forward. So once all of that took place, what would you consider to be the definitive aha moment that gave you the confidence to take everything you've learned and still continue learning to craft your own story, the one you wanted to share with others?
Well, I never planned on writing. My little sister, was drawing Cassandra for this project I was doing, and I kept sending her all of the backstories and all of the character sheets because they, of
Ah.
course, all had Dungeons and Dragons character sheets. And she said, "Well, when are you going to write your book?" And I'm like, "What book? What are you talking about?" She's like, well, that's what people do. They write books about the campaigns and their characters. And I'm like, you know me, I'm not a writer. I can't write. So I just continued, at that point, I started writing down the meetings. I started writing down different scenes, and I really, really loved it. And I
Mm.
didn't think I would, because all my life I've tried writing and it just didn't work for me. But man, I'd sit down in front of the computer and I'd just start typing, and I would type for hours and not even realize that I'd been typing for hours. So that's when I was like, maybe I could do this. And I started writing. But then I was like, I don't need these. I don't know these characters well enough. I need to really understand who they are. So I was thinking maybe I'll write each one of their backstories first. And I wrote about 30,000 words of Cassandra's backstory. And then I went, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. So I added a creative writing minor to
Okay.
biological anthropology degree and decided to figure out how to do this thing. So that's kind of where it started.
All right, all right. And that perfectly segues into the next set of questions, which focus on the meat of the story, the actual creation of the book. So, as a little icebreaker for these set of questions, Kim, when you began this journey of being an author, what really surprised you about the prospects initially in the beginning?
What surprised me is how much I was going to love, how much I loved it, and how happy it made me. My blood pressure just, lowered so dramatically. I discovered that, well, I was just calmer and happier in regular life, and I just looked forward to writing. The first day I wrote 4,000 words, I I just couldn't believe it, and that was, I think, the most surprising to me was how much I loved it.
Nice. So, going forward from that point, let's talk about the title of the book specifically, because I'm always fascinated about how authors create the titles of their books. For your book in particular, Cam, tell us the story of how that name came to be.
It wasn't the first name. The first name was going to be something stupid like the twins or something. And I didn't like the name. So I kept writing and writing and writing, thinking, well, something will come up, something will just stand out for me that
Hmm.
will be the name. And one of the constant themes throughout the story is cat running. Cat's always running. That's that's our answer to pretty much every problem, every circumstance is just to run away. Uh, and as a child, Kat doesn't remember this because 11 years old, something happened. Kat no longer remembers their history. And but for whatever reason, always used to say the phrase, you can't catch a cat with a crow. It was just something I always said. Didn't know why. Found out that it was because that's what they would say when Crow would be chasing after her.
Right.
Um, and uh, anyway, so always running, always trying to stay ahead of whatever they're running from. And
Mm.
so one phrase just stood out for me as I was typing, and all of a sudden I went, oh hey, that's what it needs to be. It needs to be about catching cat, but it's not about crow like I caught you. It's more about cat choosing not to run away.
Okay. Okay. So, my next question, Kim, is probably the one that every author is asked. I'm always intrigued by their answers is, are you an outliner or a pantser?
Okay, so for catching cat, I pantsed my way through the whole thing. I rolled the dice. Literally, I ran it almost like a D&D campaign. When I sat down to write my first fight scene, I struggled so hard because I'm like, well, how do writers decide when there's a miss? You always want your character to always, deflect or whatever they're going to do. And I couldn't figure out why and how to write a fight scene. So I went, oh, well, what? I have all these dice. I have all my character sheets. Why don't
Mhm.
I just roll it? And I had so much fun. So I pretty much pants my way through it. And in in college, we did a lot of workshop. So I had all of these random scenes. And so I would just kind of throw them wherever I thought they fit. Almost all of them have been deleted.
Mm.
um, because it a lot of these scenes had nothing to do with the plot that I eventually figured out I wanted after I finished the first draft, and it went to multiple beta readers and came back, rewrote, and first draft out to the editor, came back and had this epiphany. Oh gosh, I actually really need a plot. So I rewrote the whole book to be more plot driven. And
Mm.
like I said, just took out all that extra fluff. Um, and those will eventually be, some of them will eventually be published on my website as, deleted scenes. But
Ooh.
yeah, but now I am more of a plotter. I'm working on currently 4 different books, and I did one of them for NaNoWriMo.
Mm.
Started it in 2017, no, not 2017, 2022. Um, I got like 13,000 words in and just never made it any further. The following year, 2023, I ended up writing 76,000 words that month. And it was only because I saw a YouTube video 2 days before. So it was October 30th. And it showed you how you can outline your book. So I went through, outlined the entire book in about 30 minutes, I think. And then when NaNoWriMo started, November 1, I got going, ended up writing 76,000 words that month. So
Mm.
more of a plotter than a pantser for that book. Now I'm settling somewhere in the middle.
Okay, all right. I feel it's kind of the same for all authors, that for some books we need a detailed outline, for others we're able to write, by the seat of our pants, hence the phrase, because it all depends on the type of story that, we want to write. Now, when writing your first book, Catching Cat, did you have a routine that you set in place for you, in the sense of when you're going to write, how long you were going to write? Or did you not have a routine and kind of wrote when you felt the need to write?
I was fortunate in that I stopped writing everything other than the scenes during school. I graduated during the COVID-19 quarantine.
Mm.
So I sat at home and wrote during that period afterwards. I wasn't working. I took almost a whole year off and wrote. So it wasn't so much a routine, but I did learn that getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and writing, when it's dark, nobody's up. It's quiet, it's peaceful. My dogs aren't barking. And that was kind of my bliss, was that 4 o'clock in the morning, just get in there and get it done.
Right. Nice. Okay. Okay. And then ultimately with Catching Cats, what were the goals you had for that book at the time, since it was your first? And then ultimately, what was the promise you're making, not just to yourself as the author, but also to your prospective readers?
So with Catching Cat, I didn't really have a plan. Like I said, I just kind of pantsed my way through it. I didn't know, I I kind of knew where I was going. I didn't know I needed to have a promise to the reader. I didn't know any of those things. Even though I had, gone to school for it, it doesn't always prepare you.
Mm.
So it wasn't until after multiple rewrites that I finally was like, okay, this is what I want to achieve. Um, and really what I wanted my readers to get out of it was a desire to know where you fit in.
Mm,
And, you know, if you think about it, everybody has that part of themselves, at least one part of themselves that they think nobody can handle this part of me, whether we're too loud or too quiet, whether we're, you know, always asking questions or, you know, always saying no to going out, whatever that thing is, we always feel like it's something that's too much or not enough for
mm,
everyone else. But really, there's somebody out there who is just who you are just right for. And
right.
it's and so the book is really about finding that person or that group of people. And even if it's a group of people, there might be one or two people that you don't necessarily get along with right away, but you know, give them a chance, try and learn about them and figure out who they are and maybe there is a common ground that'll bring you together. So,
Hmm. All right. All right. Now, as you mentioned earlier, your sister was kind of like the instigator of kind of pushing you in the direction of writing Catching Cats. But when you actually decided to fully commit to writing the story of Catching Cat, what was the reaction of friends and family who discovered it for the very first time?
let's see. It was very different. I had a cousin who just fell in love with it, and she was and is one of my biggest fans. My mom read it, and my husband got about two sentences or two paragraphs in and was like, "Oh, this is fantasy. You know, I can't do this." So it was a mixed bag. It was a very mixed bag. Um, yeah.
Okay, all right. And now for some fan questions, Kim. Now, one of my viewers asked, when writing Catching Cat, who was probably your favorite character to fully explore? And bonus question, what was probably your favorite or most challenging scene to flesh out in a chapter or over a series of chapters?
Mm. One of my favorite characters to write is actually towards the end. Nightshade is a fairy, and she's a fairy assassin, and she has just got so much spark and wit, and she's just adorable. I had so much fun writing her that I was like, you know, I have to have a whole series that's just her in the fairy world. But yeah, she was my favorite. The hardest thing to write was the emotional scenes.
Mm,
It was because all of my life and throughout my whole retail career, of course, the one thing I always do is de-escalate, calm, you know, try to get people to work together. And so writing scenes where people were arguing, I always had, you know, Belle, especially, she was kind of the comic relief. And before it got too tense, she was like, let's, you know, cool it down. And my editor said, stop it. She's like, I need these scenes to go all the way through. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, I want the angst. I want the heartbreak. I want and I was like, oh, really? Why? And I had to go back in and put that in. And it was one of the hardest things for me because I had to go 100% against my nature to do that. So,
mm.
yeah. And so I had to do it for the whole book, um, which made it a little bit easier for me for, you know, future books, but it's still difficult. I still have to remind myself, no, you can't have somebody forgive somebody just because they're like, oh, sorry.
That is true.
You
That
know?
is absolutely true. And my next question, Kim, is probably the one that every writer dreads, but it is a part of the process, is twofold. Dealing with the dreaded writer's block and dealing with imposter syndrome. And that hits hard for us as creatives because we're always internalizing and compartmentalizing every little aspect. So when you were writing Catching Cat back in 2005, which automatically seems like crazy, it was only just a few months ago, but still, when you were writing that and then, of course, publishing it, how did you deal with those two aspects of the writer's journey?
So writer's block, I I dealt with by switching the project. I
Mm,
currently have 4 books that I'm working on because sometimes your brain just needs a break, and you have to be able to give yourself that time and that break. So I would just switch gears to something totally different. Um, that's what I do now too. I have 2 of them that I'm going back and forth
mm,
the majority or for the most part. That way, it gives myself a chance to, I guess, ruminate on whatever I'm blocked on. I was fortunate with Catching Cat that I didn't have a lot of that because the drive to UCSD was 3 hours a day, at least an hour and a half each way. And so
mhm.
I had an hour and a half where I could just sit there and, you know, have scenes go over and over and over and over in my head, and then I'd get home and write them totally differently. But
Absolutely.
so writer's block wasn't too bad. The other one you asked about was imposter syndrome.
Yes.
I dealt with this kind of how I would recommend people dealing with most things. You you put yourself and imagine yourself um, being successful at something. So the reason I became a manager in the first place was because of Dungeons and Dragons. That
Right.
first campaign way back when, my DM said, "What do you want to get out of playing this?" I'm like, "I don't know, but I want to be a manager." And for some reason it worked. They never, you know, promote me. It's like, "Okay, you're going to be a manager. You're going to be a leader in this campaign." I says,
Mm.
"Okay." So anytime we got to a spot where everybody's arguing back and forth, my DM would look at me and say, "Okay, Kim, what are you going to do? You're the leader here." And I had to figure it out and play act it. And within 6 months, I was actually a manager at work. So by having play acted my way through it, it gave me the confidence to get that job. All of a sudden, they looked at me differently because I was acting more as a manager. So for the publishing piece and the writer piece, I just imagine that I'm already a successful writer. People are buying my books by the droves, like hundreds, thousands. Um, and that's the mindset I have to put myself in every time I sit down, whether it's because I'm writing, whether it's marketing, whatever it is, I have to say, you know what, I'm already there, and this is just how you do it. So that's what I have to do. But it it's still there.
Absolutely. It never goes away. It's absolutely going to stay with us and lie dormant sometimes. And that kind of goes into a reflective question, which I'm actually going to combine a few reflective questions into one because they ultimately talk about the same thing. And that is, of course, what does it mean to be an author in the digital age? Because being an author now is very different than what it was to be an author 20 years ago, mainly because social media is now a necessary tool for authors. And it's absolutely insane. And social
Yes.
media is a double edged sword. It can be both beneficial and harming. On one side, you're able to connect and reach out with other people, build your team, whether that's an artist to make your covers, a group of readers to be ARC and beta readers, and an editor to go over the finer details of the book. But on the other side, of course, social media is very draining, it's emotionally taxing, and unfortunately, we do leave ourselves exposed to the negative effects of social media. And furthermore, the industry has greatly shifted. we're now seeing this teeter-totter between human voices and creativity and mass-produced generative content and publications. Because I'm sure you'll definitely agree, Kim, as if I'm not mistaken, you and I kind of began writing roughly around the same time during the lockdown
Mhm.
years, and
Yeah.
all of us creatives pretty much had enough time to write and create the stories we want to tell. And then when we published them, we just took the industry by storm. But that has oversaturated the market, where you now have a shift between those that are passionate about the industry and those who want to make a quick buck. And as I said before, generative AI has really reshaped the industry in terms of mass produced creativity on a global scale. So,
Yeah.
with all that said, Kim, in your opinion, what has not only disciplined you to stay true to yourself as a creative in this ever changing world, but do you believe that even with all the negative aspects that are trickling down into the publishing industry and the writer's world, that we are still in a golden age and not teetering, or I should say, but may teeter towards a cyber AI dark age unless things change?
I think people still want genuine stories written by people.
Mm,
Going to be those individuals that just want a quick buck. They want to be able to say, "Hey, I wrote 10 books in 1 year, or 1 month." They just want to mass produce something to try and make money. And you know, good for them. But there are a lot of people who don't want those types of stories.
mm,
Um, it, there's it, there's only so much that AI can do, and you don't get all of that original creativity from an AI book like you would from a true author. You don't get those incredible magic systems when you're going to an AI stories. You get the same thing that it's been trained to look at.
right.
So I think there's still enough room for those of us that are writing our own stories. I think that there are a lot of tools out there that have started identifying AI and saying, hey, yeah, this is AI. And so most people who are like, don't want it, they can stay away from it. So I think we're still okay.
Hmm. Very well said, Kim. Very well said. And that kind of leads into now the marketing aspect of being an author, which is very, very important. So, as an icebreaker for this set of questions, Kim, once your book was published, of course, and you went about marketing it, and as you just said before previously, you are also working on several other publications in the work. Knowing what you did for Catching Cat, is there anything you would have done differently that you would then want to improve upon for your other publications in the works?
Yes. Number one, I would have started a website. Actually, I had the website for years, never did anything with it. I never tried to build a reader base. I never talked about it um, online. And that was the biggest mistake I think I could have made. Um, I'm I'm a library branch manager now, and we have two classes in our library they're called Novel in a Year, where we are working with would-be authors, um, writers who want to publish a book. And so we're going through and teaching them all of those things that you might learn in, say, a college course or something like that. We're doing workshopping scenes, et cetera, et cetera. But one thing that I keep telling them is start your website right now. Because if you don't have a following, nobody's going to buy your book, unless you want to pay to advertise to put it out there for free. And then you get a lot of free downloads, but those aren't sales. So
No.
if goal is to make a lot of money and to eventually retire, you've got to have a reader base. And the best way to do that is to get your website up right away, to get your mailing list going, to start engaging with your readers. And that's definitely something I would have done differently. And it's still something I struggle with.
Mm.
Uh, is talking about it. A friend of mine reads it and then they come to me and they're like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, yeah. And then I change the subject because I think, oh, they're not going to want to sit here and talk to me about this book all this time. And no, they do. That's why she brought it up. So I have to accept that people are going to want to talk about the book, and I have to, um, I don't know, share and show them how excited I am about the book too. And that's difficult. And doing that online is even harder.
Yes, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head, Kim. It is not easy. And yes, again, going back to the positive side of social media, is that there is a platform for us authors to showcase our work. But to coin a phrase from a good friend of mine, it's never been more easier to publish a book. It's never been more difficult to promote and market one's book, because there are so many books that are very similar or touch
Mhm.
on the similar topic. And it is not easy. It is very daunting. It's very intimidating. And going back to what you said, talking to people and getting excited, that touches on the next question, which is understanding one's audience. Because that's also a very important thing to note for us authors, is that when we write the books, we know it better than anyone else. But when we want to share it with others, that's when we have to put on our business hats to really understand, okay, I've written a fantasy book. Who exactly is going to pick this up? What reader or age group is going to feel that this is the best book for them? And what subgenre does this fall under? It's all those questions and more. Not to mention, as authors, we also find ourselves on this tightrope act where we don't want to write a book that's so familiar it's going to be seen as literally a carbon copy of something else. We don't want to write it so new that's going to confuse people. We don't want that. It's this healthy balance of the two: familiarity to the source material, but adding something fresh to it. So, ultimately, Cam, here is the question. With all that said, how have you been able to really understand your audience? Was it difficult? And as an author, when writing Catching Cat, how much of a challenge was it to really highlight your voice as the author, but also being mindful of the genre you were writing in?
Uh, let's see. For me, I think I didn't know who my audience was going to be
Mm,
uh until later. I mean, I knew it was going to be people who enjoyed TTRPG or tabletop role playing games. Obviously, those that have played D&D before might enjoy it because, it follows the same group dynamics, the adventure, the battles. It, so I knew that would be intriguing to that type of audience. So I guess the age group would have been anywhere between, I don't know, mid-teens to my age, Gen Xers who have played in the past and maybe want to revisit it. So that's a pretty big age group. Um, and once I figured that out, I had to maybe step away from some of the sayings that I was more used to
mm,
use, or try and stay away from a lot of slang, period. Worst thing you can do as a Gen Xer is try and talk like a millennial or like a Gen Z. So keeping most of that out of there, I was hoping to attract more readers and keep more readers. Um, but the other thing I had to keep in mind is my generation is very different than millennials and Gen Zs. Their mindsets are different. The fact that I had to put emotion into my novel later
Hmm.
is a perfect example of that. My generation might not have needed all of the emotional um, angst that didn't used to be in books. These generations, they want that and need that, and it makes the book that much more rich, and it gives it a lot more heart. So I really had to kind of make a shift there,
Mm.
and I am grateful for it because I think um, it's a lot better for it.
Mm. Okay. All right. And kind of as a little fun question, one I don't typically ask authors a lot, but I think it's a really good question. So, as you mentioned just now, Kim, that you wanted your book to be almost like a hallmark and homage to tabletop role playing games, Dungeons and Dragons specifically. But I'm very curious, are there any specific books that you might have read growing up that may have played a role in some aspects of Catching Cat?
Yes. The Hobbit.
Hmm.
I actually watched I'm really dating myself here, but I watched the animated version of The
Rankin
Hobbit
and Bass.
way back
Hmm.
when it was live in the theaters. And I remember being terrified of the precious, and
Oh, Gollum
I had,
was creepy.
oh, yes, Gollum was in my nightmares for weeks. Um, but then I got over it. Eventually, I read the book, and then I read all of the Lord of the Rings series. But another book that really was impactful to me was Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss.
Ooh,
My
okay.
Yeah, my dad gave me that book, which was really surprising. He's not a fantasy fan, and he loved that book and gave it to me, and I was just blown away. I My dad's since read my book, and I was like, well, so, does this remind you of any other books? And he says, yeah, The Name of the Wind. I'm like, really? Like, you see that in there? And he goes, oh yeah, absolutely. So I know that book, I definitely know The Hobbit played a role in how I crafted the adventures, and um yeah.
All right. All right. So now's another fun little question. Give another fan question. In your opinion, Kim, which of the five physical senses is the most difficult to emulate in storytelling?
Ooh. Well, let's see. Um, Obviously, we almost default to the visual. Um, Smell and taste can be very difficult. Um, I think smell is probably one of the hardest ones.
Hmm.
Um, Touch can be, just depends on what it is that they're feeling, but smell has been very difficult for me. As a matter of fact, that was one of the challenges I gave myself in the next book. The next book is called
Ooh.
Legacies, and it is going to be this Lonnie and Akin's story. And Akin has a very heightened sense of smell, and a lot of Akin's feelings are related to different smells. And so one, just to give you a great example of that, was in that book, he says something about sadness always smells like salt water. And he couldn't imagine being at the beach or in an ocean because it would just, um, it would, it just reminded him of like the ultimate sadness.
Hmm.
Um, And, throughout the book, it's always like, oh, I know how that person's feeling because there's the scent of vinegar or, you know, peppers or something. There's always something that goes along with each emotion. So that's how I've been trying to combat that,
Nice.
that
Okay.
difficulty. Yeah, I like to give myself challenges.
Okay. Okay. And another really important question, which is probably the most daunting all authors face when they reach the final length of their journey with their first publication. This is a two-part question, Kim. So when you were writing Catching Cat and nearing the end, after working with your editor and your readers and reviewers, getting all their feedback and more, when did you know when the story was finished? And when did you know, as the author, to stop writing and trust what you had written was a story you wanted to tell?
Yeah, that is a hard one because you you don't know what you're doing with your first book.
Mm-mm.
And like I said, I had completely rewritten it. And then I rewrote it again to add all the emotion into it. Then I rewrote it again to take out a lot of that, you know, um, show tell thing, right?
Right.
A lot of the passive writing. Every time I would learn something or learn how to recognize it. Oh, I did one pass through that was just deleting all of the word just.
Mm.
So I went through over and over and over again. And finally I said, you know what? I think I've rewritten this at least 5 or 6 times. I need to stop. This is where it's at. Every author gets better. And I think I've done a lot of work improving it from where it was to where it is now. So I'm just going to allow myself to get better through the additional books. So I finally just had to stop.
Okay. Nice.
Okay, I'm done.
And that's sometimes not an easy thing to do because as authors, we can continuously write and write to our heart's content. But at the end of the day, we have to trust the process and know that the story we wrote is a story that we are proud to share with others. And speaking of others, another thing I want to highlight, especially in this part of the interview, Cam, is also networking. Networking as authors is an essential thing everyone must know about. And I'm very curious, Kim, are there any people that you have not mentioned that you would like to give a personal shout out who has helped you on your journey? And also add your thoughts on authors building a networking team.
Sure. As far as authors before I I published, or as I was writing, is I didn't know a lot of authors, other than some of the ones that I went to school with. Um, it, there weren't enough for me to really talk to until I got um through all of the editing and I had already started the whole publishing process. At that point, he, I mentioned I'm a library branch manager. I decided last year for 2025 that I wanted to host a local author fair here in
Nice.
the area. So I did. We got almost 40 local authors,
Woo,
local
not
meaning,
bad.
yeah, local to Southern California, although the majority of them were over in our county here. And met quite a few through that process. And just right around the time we started planning it, I had a woman come into the library and say, hey, I'd love to host writing classes because I want to get my book out and I believe this can hold me accountable to getting it done. And so I stepped right in and I was like, yes, let's do this together. And that's where those novel in a year classes came from. And so now I have a much larger, I guess, support group of authors that I've been able to work with, and we help each other. And it's been wonderful. And of course, you were the first one I thought of when I decided to put myself out there. So
Thank you, Kim. I am truly touched. Thank you. That really, really means a lot. And as we near the end of this incredible author interview, there are two final questions I do want to ask.
mhm.
So, we talked about a lot of things in this interview, from your journey in retail, how that transitioned over into you getting your BA in biological anthropology, and then from there, combining it with Dungeons and Dragons, being a dungeon master, a DM, and writing your own story, making a routine, working at the library, and all that stuff and more. At the end of the day, Kim, what do you want people to take away from Catching Cat and your future publications? And ultimately, what is a piece of wisdom, a pearl of wisdom, that you would like to instill into the next generation of writers?
Well, um, the one thing I want people to, I guess, take out of the books, is that you're okay, like you're acceptable, you are perfect the way you are, and there are people out there who will be a perfect complement to you, whether it's somebody that's totally the opposite of you, or somebody that just has a strength that you lack, and maybe together you can make it work. It's one of the things that Dungeons and Dragons teaches you, right? You never have, well, seldom have a campaign of all archers. You never have a campaign of all magic users, because for each one, they might have really good strengths. They might have like high hit points, or somebody might have, a lot of armor and be able to take a lot of hits, but there's always something that they're lacking. So if you've got a lot of armor, you can't hit very hard. So you're just going to be whacked on all day long, and never get out of your battle. But you always need that person, that individual, or that team of individuals who have different strengths. Don't
Right.
just look for a person that's exactly like you. Look for somebody who has something that you don't. You'll both make each other better. And then the very last thing, especially for authors, and this is something I have to tell myself all the time, is don't underestimate the value of keeping in touch with people,
Mhm.
and let other people celebrate you. Very, very difficult to do.
Very, very true, Kim, and a perfect way to end this amazing author interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. Thank everyone for joining us for another amazing author interview here on the show. Like a huge thank you to my friend Kim for coming on the Wandering Scribe, making her official debut, and hopefully the first of many podcast interviews yet to come, not just on my channel, but on other people's platforms as well. Kim, thank you so much for coming on the show. I truly do appreciate it. Now, where can people find you on social media if they want to interact and connect with you? And where can people buy a copy of Catching Cats?
I do have my own website. It's ktpike.com. From there, you can find me just about everywhere. I'm on Facebook. I do have a linktree/ktpike will get you to just about everywhere. And if you're looking to purchase the book, go to that's the number 2, books2read.com/catchingcat. And you will find just about everywhere it is in ebook format, it's in paper, hardback, etc., etc. It's currently, for another couple weeks, on Kindle Unlimited. That will be coming down. The last day on Kindle Unlimited is the 25th of January. And the 26th, I'm going wide to ebook retailers everywhere. And one last thing is January 16th and 17th, you can download it for free on Amazon, those 2 days only. Just in case you want to check it out. For for free.
Awesome. I will link all those down below in the description of this video. Again, everyone, thank you so much for joining us for another amazing author interview. A huge thank you to my friend Kim Pike for coming on the show. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all new episodes coming out later this week and the weeks after. And until then, this has been the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill signing out. Wish you all a wonderful afternoon or evening wherever you are in the world. And until next time, we'll see you all in the next episode. Take care, everybody.